Hello guys, my name is Harsha and I'm 31 years old, and right on the cusp of my 31st birthday, my father passed away, which was on February 2nd, 2023, and my birthday was March 12th, so it's just a little before that. And I'm just here to share some thoughts, perspectives that maybe it might be useful to some people who might be going through something similar, or might have to deal with loss of some kind, or separation. It could be of whatever it is. But the bottom line is this: the universe tries to put you in a position where you are faced with impermanence. You are taught that things are not forever. What you're standing on is not very solid ground, and it feels like you always have more time with your loved ones, or with whatever the moment is, basically, you could say. It could be with a friend, it could be with your parents, it could be with your job that you're in, it could be whatever. It could be the way your career is going. Everything is playing out in a way where you're not questioning how shaky it is, meaning it could all change in a moment. In a fraction of a second, things could be different. So change is something that we don't really mostly want. Most human beings aren't really fond of change, meaning when something is taken away from them, or something is removed or subtracted from their life, or when they're in their comfort zone, they just wanted to keep going the same way, and all of a sudden if things change, it sort of throws everybody off balance, and that's not something human beings want. That's why human beings are always trying to search for where can they find security, right? So so what do all the wise, enlightened beings, the masters, um, of the past, of ancient times, and of today, and I'm talking about the spiritual masters who were genuinely in that evolved higher space, right? You just know are some people are on a slightly higher level of thought process, of wisdom. The quality of their wisdom is genuine and true and pure, and it's not commercialized. I'm not talking about these spiritual organizations or institutions or people that's set about just commercializing these things as if it were a self-help routine of some kind, as if you could buy enlightenment, or that kind. I'm talking about the genuine wisdom of true spiritual masters, particularly of the past. um, you know, at least a good 50 years before, or 100 years before, or 1,000 years before. The yogis, the masters, the beings who were somehow able to tap into a higher frequency of understanding of life. So when it comes to these people, what they always speak about, just across the board in all kinds of cultures. It could be a Buddha, it could be a Ramana Maharishi, it could be a Yogananda, it could be whoever it is, right? And we see that they all, in their own ways, each of these yogis, each of these masters, have understood somehow that suffering is an inevitability. It's a component of life that cannot really be ignored, cannot really be escaped from, in a sense. You can't really run away from it, you can't go anywhere. And according to the understanding of the yogis, of these masters, to be born itself is a beautiful thing. There is much you can do to express yourself over here. This is a playground for your creativity. You, as the cosmic being, wants to express yourself this way. You're a component of the universe expressing yourself as all of these beautiful versions of yourself, like reflections on a mirror, right? All these are beautiful reflections of yourself. And all that is beautiful and all that is ugly and all that is in between, it's all you. And you want to know every facet of yourself. You want to explore every shade of yourself. It's sort of like a great novelist or a writer, right? If he wrote a character, a truly complex, interesting character, it wouldn't just be a single unidimensional character. It would have so many facets to it, each of those characters, right? The best characters are the ones where there is a certain kind of depth in the quality of the writing. And so it has many, many layers to it, that character. And so we're exploring so many different shades and how that character would respond in different situations, and all that is possible within that character's mind. That novelist and that writer goes deep into it, right? So in a similar way, you could say what the yogis are saying is, you as the soul are here to explore yourself, your own being, and all the permutations and combinations and the possibilities of your own being in various forms. And that could be personal, that could be on your career front, that could be on a creative level, that could be on you being somebody who's exploring your outer journey as well as your inner journey in every which way. So in the due process of this, you grow year by year, week by week, day by day, if that's possible. And you eventually get to this thing called as depth, right? So the way I see it, my father inspired me in every which way possible. He was a deeply sensitive, generous, kind, and loving soul. And he taught me so much. And that doesn't mean that he might have not had some of his flaws, but all that was good in him outweighs all the flaws. And I think that's so important to see in our loved ones, right? Our loved ones are not always perfect, but there is so much good in them and so much that they might have done for us that we should be grateful for and appreciative of. They aided our understanding of life. They aided our understanding of love. They aided our understanding of kindness and empathy and generosity and compassion. And all those my dad did for me. Apart from that, he was also my best friend. He was also my spiritual guru, my mentor in every which way possible. He was also my teacher as an artist, as a creative person. He taught me how to play guitar. He's the reason I became a musician. He taught me how to compose music and write my own songs, write my own music. He taught me why this background score is really good and why that background score is mediocre. He would point out to me this one bit by MSV or by Ilayaraja sir or by A.R. Rahman and say, you hear that little trumpet over there? And maybe when I was in like 10th grade or whatever, I'd be like, no, I can't hear it. And he'd be like, look closely. And then he'd put on the earphones to me and he'd make me listen to it again and be like, I can hear that brass trumpet now. Yeah. and you would normally not hear it sometimes. You'd miss that because the other layers of singing and everything are going on. So he taught me how to go deep into it and be detailed oriented about my approach to art. um, he taught me how important writing was to cinema, to film. At the end of the day, storytelling is all about how well something is written, and then only the camera, the production design, and the artwork in it, and the performance and all the other things come. The writing first has to be the most powerful, is something he really taught me, because he was a writer himself. He was a production designer. He was somebody who understood performances. He studied in art school, so he was a graphic designer. So he just did a whole variety of things. He understood carpentry, he understood architecture, he understood construction and building things, and he was a very handy person to have around the house. Not that I have half of his talent in that department, but yeah. So I learned all of those things from him. I learned how to be somebody who can communicate from him. He was so important in that sense to me, because he would just randomly be driving and see a field of trees, or plants, some paddy fields that are there by the village side, whatever. He would just stop the car, get down, speak to the farmer over there, immediately become friends, get their contact number, and he would anywhere he could just make friends. He could just go up to anybody and speak to anybody, and in 5 minutes make them feel as if he's known them forever. And I think that's a very crafty, beautiful quality in a person. When you need to communicate to people, that's very, very useful. So I learned that from him, how to be a little bit more of an extrovert. I probably was much more of an introvert maybe when I was 16, 17, 18, and then I sort of learned so much from him, how to be a little bit more of somebody who could speak and communicate my ideas, thoughts, perspectives, whatever it is, from him. So he was such a good talker, orator. I sometimes, I used to feel I should interview him someday, and ask all of his thoughts about things, because he had the most wonderful thoughts. But I didn't get the chance to do that. So maybe I will start a podcast at some point, and I would like to interview a lot of people, because I feel like people's time on this planet is limited, in a sense, at least in this incarnation or this physical body. The yogis, as they say, the consciousness that is you, the true self, the divine cosmic energy that is you, is just letting go of this body as if it were a piece of clothing. And when your clothing gets old, you throw it away, discard it, and then you buy a new piece of clothing, and you take on that new piece of clothing. Now when you discard and throw that piece of dress from yesterday, today you wearing a new dress does not really affect your body, right? Because when you throw this dress away and you wear a new dress, the body completely remains unharmed, and it goes through no change. So the yogis are talking about how similarly the death of the body itself is like a dress for the soul. So what you call as the soul, or what you call as the Atman, or that soul's energy that you are, your personality, your mind, whatever you want to call it, all of that being, that soul just discards this body as if it were an old piece of clothing, completely unharmed, unchanged. It moves on to its next life after an intermediate period sometimes, and then moves on, and it has other desires to fulfill, other things it wants to explore. It takes birth elsewhere, in a surrounding that is more conducive for its next stage of evolutionary growth, in a new womb, to a new set of parents, in a different country perhaps, or a different gender perhaps, etc., etc. There's all these other things that change. Whatever is required for that soul to grow and evolve, that's where the soul might go. This is the understanding of the yogic masters, the enlightened masters of various Eastern spiritual paths. And now, when you understand that, you realize that the clock is ticking for every one of us, right? As far as this physical body goes. So, when I look at my father, I see that he lived a whole life, absolutely. He never went a day without being curious, without being a seeker of some kind, without exploring something new every single day. So he was so curious about existence. He was a philosopher, he was an artist, he was a seeker, he was a man who wanted to follow the path of truth. And he did that till his very end. And that was very inspiring to me. And I think every parent, if they're able to do that and inspire their children to, be curious and be a seeker of some kind, and open their minds up in a way where they don't feel closed, to certain ideas or certain perspectives, but rather you're like in a space where it's completely free form, where, hey, I don't know the truth, anything is possible until proven otherwise. This is what science is saying right now, but science might change its mind 300 years from now, as it has in the past. Now, keeping yourself open to that. It could be in science, it could be in art, it could be the way you present something in your work, it could be, your relationship, whatever it is. It was a very modernistic point of view, while still being able to absorb the best of all the traditionalities that the ancient world has left us with, all of the rich culture that has been produced in this world. So, taking the best from everything in a sense and being open to that. So, that was the kind of person he was. And what I wanted to say through this was, you respect and admire and love that soul deeply. But when it comes to death, when you're losing a loved one, while you must take your own time to move on from it, grieve as long as you need to, go to therapy if you need to, deal with that loss as healthily as possible, in as healthy a way as you can. It could vary from person to person, right? And as what that means to them, how they want to move on and how long they want to take. For some people it might be months, some people it might be years. That depends on the person, and there is no right or wrong answer to that. But the thing I would like to stress on, as far as accepting things spiritually, is we must learn to embrace the idea that life is not as precious without its opposite duality, which is death. It is like, when does light really get value? Light gets value only if you have something called as darkness. Now, if I switch off this light and then I turn it on, it has a certain value only when there is darkness. Now, if I turn off this light and there is shadow on this side, right? We don't look at the shadow as a bad thing. You don't look at it as a negative thing. That shadow or that contrast of no light, you don't look at it as a bad thing. It's just the opposite. It's just this duality. And now if the light comes on back, it's just what that is. So we shouldn't label these things as good or bad. Rather, it is what it is. It is light and it's darkness. It's life and it's death. It's just playing within its opposites. That's how creation is made, in a sense. The yogis, the enlightened masters of ancient India, had this understanding of consciousness or cosmic consciousness, what they referred to as the Brahman, right? Now, this is not to be confused with the prefix of Brahmin, which is this caste thing. It's nothing to do with that. Brahman, Brahman, Brahman was just the Sanskrit word they used for consciousness or cosmic consciousness, which they called as the core source from which we all emanate from, that which we already are. Now, according to the Indian yogis, enlightenment is not something that you go and arrive at. It's not something you go and newly acquire. Enlightenment to them is simply the self-realization that you already are the enlightened one to begin with. All you have to do is remove or subtract the layer of Maya on top that makes you believe you are this limited body, this limited mind, this limited personality or ego, ahamkara, this limited personality that you consider to be your own. Now that to them is sort of like a glass which has, a whole bunch of dirt on top of it. Enlightenment is just using the vipers of wisdom to remove the dirt so that you can see through the windshield clear as day into the enlightened self that you already are, that you've always been, that you never moved away from, while you were playing the part or this acting performance of this individualized, limited personality here. And this is the core teaching of non-duality, Advaita Vedanta that was taught by so many of these masters. And if anybody wants to read something on it, I would suggest somebody reads a couple of books to begin with. If you're interested in these ideas of consciousness by the Eastern masters, you guys can read one book which is Swami Adi Shankara, the philosopher, Indian philosopher, and that book is full of beautiful philosophy, metaphysics, science, all of it combined. It's a beautiful book called as Viveka Chudamani. That's Viveka, Viveka Chuda, Chuda, Chudamani, Mani. Viveka Chudamani. You can Google it. There are PDFs of it. Swami Adi Shankara is his name. And there's another wonderful enlightened master, Ramana Maharishi, Ramana, Ramana Maharishi, for those who don't know out there in the world. His book, Who Am I? Who Am I? That's also available on Google for free. PDF, you can just put Who Am I? Ramana Maharishi PDF and Swami Adi Shankara Viveka Chudamani PDF, and you'll get it. The first couple of links, you'll find it. Beautiful books to read for anybody on the path of searching for the truth and what these Eastern enlightened masters have to say. I think it's very beautifully condensed in those two books. Now, you will find that these masters talk about embracing death as a normal part of what this creation is. And you can look at it almost in the same way as how, when you go look at the ocean, if you go to the beach and you're sitting there looking at the ocean, right? Now the waves go up and then the waves go down, and then the waves go up and then the waves go down. The ups and the downs, when you look at the waves, when you look at the ocean, everybody says, I love the beach. I love looking at the ocean. It's so calming. It's therapeutic. People have studied this and found that it is indeed therapeutic for a lot of people in the mind, psychologically, to just look at the ocean. And it's so beautiful. People love looking at the sunrise at the ocean, sunset at the ocean, whatever it is, right? Now, what is the ocean really like? It's just these waves going up and down and up and down. What is so beautiful about it if you think about it? How is it that you can look at the ocean, you're just seeing the ups and the downs and the ups and the downs of the waves going and calling it beautiful, but these ups and downs of your life, you don't look at it as beautiful. How come? You just keep wanting the ups. I don't want the downs. So go ask any single successful person out there, even in the material sphere, you know, and they will say, I learned more from my failures than I learned from my success. This is something I have seen unanimously. The most successful people in every sphere of life, in every field, they speak about this in all their biographies. And I'm a voracious reader, and I love reading a lot of biographies of a lot of real life people. And this is something I've seen as a pattern. All of them unanimously say this in their books and in their interviews and all of this. You can take any field, any sphere of material existence where somebody has been successful, who's seen highs and lows. They always inevitably come about and say that the failures taught them more than their successes did. Meaning their ups was great, that was fun, that was enjoyable, but their downs is where they really grew and evolved and became even more wiser. That's the price you might pay for wisdom, in a sense. So we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay, just as when we look at the ocean and you see the ups and downs and the beauty of that. We have to be okay with the ups and downs of our life and see it just as the beauty of this. So when it comes to life and death, it too is like this. When you look at the ocean, a wave begins, it is created, it is born, and then by the time it reaches the shore, the wave descends progressively, right? It descends until it is accelerated to its death. Correct? So a wave is born, and then by the time it reaches the shore, the wave dies. And the death of this wave is the birth of the next wave. This cycle finishes and the next cycle begins. It's just all over nature if you look at it, right? So why can't we look at our life in the same beautiful way you look at nature? The birth of this wave, who I call as my father, who I call as Ashok, the birth of that wave, and its period has finished, and then the death of that wave, it brings about the next part of the cycle. So, it's not a bad thing. We just have to learn to look at it in a more wiser perspective, perhaps, right? And when you look out at a tree, for example, you're walking along and suddenly a leaf falls. When you see this leaf fall, right, do you ever think to yourself, hey, that leaf shouldn't have fallen. That leaf should have stayed for another 5 more years on that tree up there. That leaf has fallen 5 years too early. That leaf was very young. How could it fall so easily? We don't ask any of those questions. It is only with human life and with the human body that we seem to view the falling or the death of that being with such a lens of it being a mistake or an error of some kind, that it shouldn't have happened. That's too early that this person came. They shouldn't have gone now. They should have gone 10 years from now, and all of that. So I think we have to learn to view it like how we view nature. When that leaf falls from the tree, it's just the time of that leaf. You don't question it, and you don't overtly try to dissect it and analyze it and calculate why exactly it has happened. You just embrace it. Just letting it go. Just letting it be as is. When the leaf cropped up on the tree, it was its time to be on the tree. And then when the leaf detached itself from the tree and fell to its death, what you call its death, that leaf has fallen down. You embraced it. You're like, it's just its time. You don't ask, wait, but there's another 10 more leaves out there on that tree still. Why didn't that leaf go before this leaf? You don't question it. That leaf is up there till it's up there. That is its time. That is its destiny. So this leaf which has fallen is sort of going to be like your loved one that has fallen, or that has passed away, or that is separated, whatever it is, from your physical existence. But you don't have to take that in a negative way. You can grieve it. Take all the time you need to grieve it. Don't let anybody tell you you shouldn't grieve it. Take all the time you need. You can mourn it, you can grieve it, you can feel sad about it, you can cry if you need to, you can let it out, you can speak to somebody, you can go to therapy, you can listen to music that makes you feel better. Do whatever it is that you need to do. Nothing is going to be stopped on all those fronts. The only thing we need to do is, apart from all of those things, we just need to move on with the understanding and clarity of this spiritual wisdom of what life is and what death is. So, this is just something I hope helps a lot of people who might be seeing this someday, maybe. Even if it just helps one person, I'm still doing it for them. And letting go is not an easy thing. It's a difficult process, and I understand that. But think about it this way. I'll give you another example that my guru taught me when my father passed away. And I have to also tell you when this is happening, when I am speaking all this. Today is 9th April. So, my father passed away on February 2nd. So it's been about 2 months and a few days, give or take. So I'm making this video 2 months after the passing away of my father. And I must say, all of the spiritual work that I have done in the last 10 years really, really, really helped me. 10, 15 years. Meditating every day, self-inquiry, reflection, prayer of some kind, to the larger universe, surrendering, in a state of humility and humbleness. And I just noticed my nails, I have to cut my nails. Pardon me, I'm really sorry about it. I moved into a new house and I couldn't find my box of nail cutters for the last 2 weeks. So once I find it tomorrow or so, I will sort of cut my nails. Sorry about that. Apologies. But, at the end of the day, I think it's all about how you embrace the death of a loved one, how to do it with peace, with love, with understanding, with clarity. And the example I'll leave you guys with is something that my guru taught me after my father passed away. And I think it is a very poetic, beautiful way of explaining it to me and how I took it. And think about it this way. So there is a bird, a parrot, let's say, right? You have a pet parrot in your house. Now you have a pet parrot who you've been feeding every single day. You've been talking to it, you've been communicating with it, it's been sitting on your arm, it's flying around your house, it's perched on your shoulder, it's speaking to you, it's your best friend, right? Now this parrot, this pet, you can equate it with any pet, right? Now this parrot is sitting inside its cage every single day, right? You've put it in that cage, you think it's pretty happy, in there, and it's a golden cage, right? You think you're feeding it every day, you think it has its own space inside, and you've kept that room well lit with sunlight and coming in through the window and all of that, right? You're keeping water for the bird every day, whatever. And you think that that's a wonderful place for it to be. And this parrot is your best friend, and every single day you're seeing it and you're waking up to it and all of that. Now one day, the parrot somehow manages to open the door of its cage, and it sees the open window and it flies off completely into its own freedom. So the parrot, flying off towards its freedom, now has left the cage empty. Okay? Now, should you be sad and unhappy and grief-stricken and miserable that the parrot is no longer there in that room, in that cage with you? Or should you be happy, feeling wonderful, truly joyous, full of peace, compassion, love, and empathy for the parrot that has finally flown towards its own freedom. It's free. It's now gone out there into the skies, completely free, not chained to this cage. The parrot has flown towards its own freedom. Should you be happy for that? Or should you be sad that it's no longer with you in the cage? Now, if you were that parrot, wouldn't you be happy, joyous that you've found your freedom? You've lived all this time in this cage, and that was beautiful while it lasted, but now you found your own freedom. So, that cage is like the body, the human body, that is very limited. There is only so much time that the infinite soul, being, energy that is in you can sustain itself in this body. There comes a day when that cage door opens and the infinite being, the soul energy, leaves that body completely towards its flight of freedom. So we should be happy when our loved one has passed from this physical existence, in a sense, towards its own freedom. They are no longer here in this place of suffering, because this body many times is suffering for many, many souls, and it feels a sense of freedom when it's left it. And the science is exploring this a lot. Neuroscience is exploring this. There's different medical communities exploring this through near-death experiences. People who have had NDEs coming out and talking about how when they've left the body, they felt so much freedom. They did not feel the fear of death, that they felt in the limited body, etc., etc. There will be more progressions on this that the medical Western scientific community will find, that will corroborate the truths that have been spoken by the ancient Indian Eastern mystics and enlightened masters on the subject of death, the afterlife, the astral world, etc., etc. But that's all for another time. But for now, we can just understand that when that parrot has taken to its flight of freedom, we can support it, we can encourage it, we can love it for the time it's spent with us. We can be grateful for it, and then just let it go joyously, with understanding, with clarity, with a smile on our face, genuinely, because you're coming from a spiritual perspective of life and death and everything in between, right? So think of that loved one passing away like that soul is taking its flight of freedom from the cage of existence, physical, material existence, from this body, from this mind. Let it go. Let it be free. It will be fine. The universe will take care of it. And with that, I leave you guys. I hope all of you guys are doing very well. My condolences to anybody this happens to. It's never easy. Take all the time you need to heal from it in whatever ways that feel healthy to you. This is just a spiritual perspective I offer here. That's all. I hope it's useful to anybody who's listening to this. All my love to you guys. Take care. Until next time. God bless.